Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 17th episode of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by thesportster.com. On this episode, we talk all things Extreme Rules, predictions, match card, where that pay-per-view is going, the Kevin Owens pipe bomb that he did on SmackDown Live, Raw and SmackDown this week, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, and a bunch of other topics as well. That is the 17th episode of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by thesportster.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by thesportster.com. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with the other host of the show, Brandon Shirk-Cohen. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Jim. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. I'm sneaking in our hosting today while at the gym because I'm trying to fit my training in. So we did an episode like this one time before. I sounded a little out of breath. I apologize for sounding like that again today, but we'll do our best to get through it. How's your week been?
Good. Busy. What about you?
Well, busy's good. Yeah, I'm still working on baseball. I got a couple more weeks of provincials in Alberta, Canada. So getting through that, watching wrestling, being a fan, and getting ready for Extreme Rules on Sunday.
Yeah, that's it's always the fun episodes when we do the predictions and stuff.
That's right. Well, we're going to do that today. Before we get into it, I suppose we should tell people where they can find us. We're hosted on anchor.fm. You can look up Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast there. Where else are we?
Google Podcasts, or I think it's Google Play. I don't know what they actually refer to it as, but Google, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, really anywhere you can find your podcasts.
Yeah, so we encourage you to do that, or go to thesportster.com or wrestlingwriteups.com to download and listen to the episodes there as well. Where do you want to start today?
We can start with, I feel like most of this is going to be WWE stuff today, so we can go with like the two pieces of non-WWE news and then move on from there. So Enzo and Janela, they had like an exchange at a Blink-182 concert, and that's apparently not a work.
Yeah, if you saw the video, it sure is, at least to me, who knows what's really going on. I wrote an article about it and said, we don't really know how it all started. Enzo claims that Janela came up to him, sort of started to cause trouble, and then when Enzo squared up, he backed right down. Yeah. I don't know if that's... Shocker. I watched that video, and clearly Enzo didn't put the whole video up there for people to see. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to know how it started. To me, it looks like Enzo just being Enzo. At least that's my take on it. What did you think of when you saw that video?
I mean, like you said, kind of classic Enzo, right? Like just, especially, we don't know the full side of it, especially when we're watching one person's video and the video, like you said, isn't the full thing. It's kind of cut off. I really don't care. I think it's a concert, enthusiast. I think it's lame to get in a fight at a concert. Don't go do your own thing in your own time. Kind of lame. You're both fans of the band, obviously. You're both at a Blink show for a reason. Why are you fighting?
Yeah, well, I watch what happens after an incident like that with anybody, not just Enzo and Janela, but anybody. And you watch their behavior after the incident is over. And to me, I saw those exchanges on social media, and Enzo's egging everything on, right? He's calling them names, he's calling them out, he's saying he backed out. Like, he's trying to keep the fight going on social media, where Janela...
He's like, hey, I said hi. Yeah, he's like, I said hi, my name's Joey Janela. Like, he introduced himself. Like, that's all he added, really.
Well, he doesn't really care, right? Like, he's retweeting what people are saying about Enzo, and maybe he shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, he's just sort of playing it down like it's no big deal. Mm-hmm. Where Enzo's building it up to try to get the attention, which leads me to believe that Enzo claiming Janela started it all, those two don't match, right? If you're going to go on social media and claim that Janela is starting everything, but you're the one egging it on, trying to keep it alive, something tells me we don't know the whole truth there, right?
Yeah, it doesn't add up. I mean, unless Janela's a genius, the classic punches a guy, then walks away and says, oh my God, like, what happened? And then when the guy responds, he's like, look, he's trying to hit me. But I don't think that's, like, how it went. Also, like, the fight wasn't really much of a fight, right? It was kind of like two guys, like, squaring up.
Yeah, and there was no fists thrown from what we understand, and the video certainly doesn't show it. Janela looks like he's backing off, almost with a reaction like, what's going on right now? Yeah. I don't understand what's happening. Where Enzo sort of got his crowd. He told his buddy to film it. He's got his girlfriend telling him to back off. It's like, I don't know if anybody thinks there's something to gain here, but to me, anybody is going to gain something, it'll be AEW and Joey Janela. Because he's on, and will be on a TV show. It's press for AEW, whereas Enzo is having a hard time finding work. So he's just doing everything to stay alive, right? Stay relevant, stay on people's minds. And when he watched this video, he just looks like a jerk.
Yeah, I don't really know what think about this with what Janela just went through at Fighter Fest, and obviously what we know he's gone through in the past with like the kind of matches he's done. Do you think he really cares about getting punched in the face by someone, especially someone as like small as Enzo in general, like comparatively to like other like big wrestlers? I don't know that I really would worry about getting punched in the face if I'm also okay with taking 35 thumbtacks to my back and barbed wire on my legs and arms, and there's a difference there. I'm sure he's fine with getting taking a few punches for real at the worst case. So I don't think he's bothered whatsoever. Enzo, on the other hand, I can't see being the kind of guy who's going to square up with like a broken light bulb, right? And nothing wrong with that. Most normal human beings don't want to have a broken light bulb like jammed into their forehead, but people like Janela don't really care. They lose that kind of like sense of reality for some reason. So yeah, I don't really think he was bothered much by Enzo regardless, even if they did get into an actual fight.
I watched that video, and I don't think Janela actually had any interest in being involved in
No,
anything.
I
But
don't
I think
think so.
after the incident, he looks at it and goes, "Well, I guess this is good for us, right? I'll take one for AEW. I get some press out of it. They'll probably never bring Enzo in to fight him in any sort of match. Why would they do that? Enzo's just a goof. But it's good press for AEW. It just shows Janela's a little bit nutty.
Well, that's
exactly what his character is, right?
Yeah, that's what his character is. And also, we're at the point now where it doesn't really matter who does what with Enzo and who's in the right and who's in the wrong. The crowd, and by the crowd I mean like the general populace, like we just don't like Enzo very much, you know? I don't really care one way or another, but he's obviously the guy who just, if you're consistently the one common factor in every one of these things, maybe you're the issue at some point. And that's kind of how people are going to see it, whether it's true or not, right? Maybe the guy's just really unlucky. I don't think that's the case necessarily, but even if it is, it's to the point where people are never going to take his side. So Janela was never going to come out as the one looking bad in this situation. I don't think that would have been possible.
Yeah, Enzo is constantly the common denominator in the pot stirring.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it
and
is.
not even pot stirring. He legitimately like adds onto the fuel, like the pot, like and adds fuel to the fire after the fact, like consistently.
Yeah, he's pouring gas on the fire constantly, right? Well, I don't know if it deserves much more of our attention than that little conversation.
No, I don't think so.
Where should we go next?
We can talk about LAX. Their contracts are done with Impact Wrestling. That's pretty big. It's not the original LAX, but they've been with the team since I want to say 2017. They're 4-time champions. They've got the longest reign, the longest cumulative reign with their 4 title reigns for the tag team championships in Impact. So it's a pretty big tag team on the open market. In my opinion, I can see them going to AEW, but there's also reports that both AEW and WWE are interested. So
yeah, I put a poll up on Wrestling Write-Ups, our Twitter account, with just under 300 votes. It's pretty even, but I would say most people are leaning towards AEW as a destination for that tag team. I don't know if under Heyman or Bischoff, if LAX would be wasted. I think that's the concern for most people, is you get a good tag team that was really strong on the independent scene. And like you said, not the original grouping of that tag team, but still, you get those two guys focusing on making them strong. I don't think WWE would waste them. That said, I understand why fans are looking at AEW as an option. What do you think about them staying in Impact? Do you think that's even possible at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see it not being an option, even if it's, not now, in the future, potentially, because we see guys go to and from Impact all the time on the... it's one of those companies that just, when you're familiar with it, you're familiar with it. I don't know what the... why it happens like that, but you see it all the time, where people will go to and from. So, whether it's now or in the future, I can see Impact still being in the future. But,
yeah.
For WWE, I can see people being soured on the idea, and I'm kind of there as well. When you have the club, and you have the revival, and you have heavy machinery who's actually being used, but wasn't like an indie talent. Oh, the Viking Raiders, right? That's another team. A lot of these teams that are on the show, and they're not being used prominently. And I mean, like I said, like with the Viking Raiders and the club, even like they weren't used at all. Even the revival had to basically threaten to leave the company a few times to even be used in the situation they're in. Tag team wrestling isn't what it was in WWE, and in AEW, it's very prominent, and it's done properly. It's not even that it's being used properly; it's that it's actually being like featured as like, hey, let's look at the main event of the last event, and it was a 6-man tag team match between the Young Bucks, like the Elite, and Laredo Kid and the Lucha Bros. So we know that they're willing to use these guys in very prominent roles, and they do a really good job with it, even in a match that wasn't as good as the tag team match between the Young Bucks and the Lucha Bros of Double or Nothing. It was still a good match. Like, it wasn't anything to shake a stick at. It just didn't, paled in comparison. So when you know that they're able to use these tag teams, and especially when you have the Young Bucks, who are probably the best tag team in the world, that's obviously arguable, but they're definitely the most popular. When you have that team there, who they're obviously a tag team first, why when they're one of the executive vice presidents of the company, you know they're going to use tag teams efficiently. So I can't see them being wasted in AEW. But like you said, with Bischoff and Heyman, maybe tag teams get a resurgence, because back in the early 2000s and like late 90s and stuff, tag teams weren't dead. Tag teams were actually at an all-time high.
And I wonder what the money looks like too, right? Like we know and we've heard about WWE tossing out all sorts of dollars to guys to keep them around. Well, what are they willing to toss out to guys like LAX? I mean, at what point do these guys look at it and go, man, the money's good in both places? I wonder how much that plays a role into their decision.
Yeah, I wonder, like you said, when they try and retain people, they offer a lot of money. Even for guys like Rhino, Ty Dillinger, like contracts that you cannot refuse, is what we've heard. Like pretty much ridiculous sums of money that, like, I mean, we saw the Canellis couple both get significant contracts, and they've used on TV once, like on Raw, in the last year, right? We saw the club get a huge contract. These people are being used, and the company still wants to pay them very handsomely to keep them away from the competition. So when you're talking about free agents who have no kind of loyalty or allegiance to the company, why wouldn't they want to throw huge amounts of money to them? Right? I can see Santana and Ortiz getting huge contract offers from WWE, but AEW can match tit for tat as far as that's concerned. The issue is, do they see them as a... That's the most important thing we don't talk about. Is this team an asset that's worth paying enough money on, as opposed to paying other guys, a little less? I would say that they're a really good team and they can be used, and just forget about how good they are in the ring. They have a name behind them already, right? They already have the familiarity. Having that kind of brand is already important, or is very important when you're building up a team and you're building up a company. That's why Jericho and JR are both in, and now Moxley are really huge players in AEW. And Cody.
Well, we also know that WWE is very actively looking for, whether it's a tag team or a singles wrestler, that will hit home with the Latino audience. They've tried to do things with Rey Mysterio. They've tried to do things with Alberto Del Rio. They've tried to do things with a lot of guys. They had it with Eddie Guerrero. They're really looking for that team or that singles wrestler that will hit that market hard, that they are really strong with the Latino crowd, is a massive asset for WWE, right? It hits on a whole international level that they are actively looking to try to, dig into. Just like Jinder Mahal, in the Asian market and other things like that, right? They're always looking for those international guys that they can really push, and LAX is one of those teams.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it too, like you said, especially the Jinder Mahal thing when they pushed him so hard as the WWE champion for a year. So if you're going to put your top championship on a guy just for this, and nothing against Jinder Mahal, I'm sure he works really hard and he got to the point, like, regardless of what we see on TV and what we liked or disliked, we know that these guys are working hard, right? We don't know who is the hardest worker behind the scenes other than what we hear. And from all accounts, Jinder's a really good guy, and there's nothing wrong with the person. And I'm not saying that he got handed a championship. They're trying to give these guys, or the fan bases from different countries, someone to look up to and someone to follow. There's no coincidence that the huge India tour or whatever was happening with Jinder Mahal, or like right after Jinder Mahal was champion. They're trying to get all the publicity they can at the time. So when you're talking about a fan base that's so close to the United States, I mean, anywhere in South America or anywhere in Mexico, it's such a huge market. And it's not just a huge market, it's a huge market of wrestling fans, right? They have their companies and they love their talents. Why wouldn't they try and get Santana and Ortiz and give them huge money and say, hey, we'll use you in a prominent role? Whether or not they actually use them in that prominent role, we'll never know. Don't forget, if they come to WWE, they're probably going to NXT first. So they would definitely get a prominent role, at least at NXT to start, and then you can see what happens from there. Maybe, I know we've also heard about a lot of superstars getting an out clause recently, whether it's WWE or AEW. There's been out clauses in the contracts after, let's say, a year, after 2 years, whatever it is. So maybe they say, hey, and sorry, that was also offered to Cody and the Young Bucks and Hangman Page, huge contracts, network deal, and also a 6-month out clause. So it's possible that they're going to say, hey, try this. We'll use you well, and then you can see if you want to resign or not. If you want to continue your contract, like opt into the next year. But that's when it can get, they can also time things out very smart with that and say, great, you want to opt in? Awesome. Now we're going to call you up. And now you're in obscurity. Right? EC3 is another one of those guys who came back, and he was huge. There was like no one bigger than EC3 for a while in Impact. And then he got buried. Bobby Lashley's only now starting to recover. Bobby Roode even say, well, he's kind of like mid-card. But we thought he might be, back in the limelight with that mustache, and then where's he gone since then? AJ
Yeah,
Styles
they
is
didn't
really,
use him at all.
yeah, AJ Styles is the only one and he doesn't even count. AJ Styles is so good, you can't even count him with everybody else. He's just in a world of his own. So it's interesting. It's hard when you look at your peers and say, well, these guys didn't get used, whether it's a tag team, whether it's a singles people from Impact. That has to play a role, but sometimes the money's too much to worry about, I imagine.
Well, my hope is that WWE sees some sort of air of cool about this team, much like the Usos have that air of cool about them.
Sure.
I can just envision an Usos versus LAX feud and how over that would be with the crowd, right? Good matches, but at the same time, two very distinct cultures battling with each other with their own backing audience. I think that'd be really fun to watch. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they wind up.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teams in WWE. Like, there's a lot of matches that could be had with LAX that I would love to see. You just got to hope that they'd actually take place.
Sure. Where else are we? Randy Orton, that he's been gone from WWE television for a while, and the reason is because he's dealing with a nagging neck injury that, from what I understand, isn't too serious, but at the same time, he had some vacation time already planned. It's been bugging him, so they just took it cautiously and sat him out. But he returned on July 8th at a live event for WWE, so he's good to go. It's just a matter of where they want to put him and what they want to do with him, which I think is one of the reasons Cesaro is now in that mix with Aleister Black at Extreme Rules. I think that was originally pegged to Randy Orton, but because of the injury, they moved on from that idea. But where they put him next, I don't know. But he sounds like he's coming back right away.
Do you want to see him on SmackDown or on Raw?
I question whether or not he has the name brand, the popularity to be on both brands like a lot of these guys are. I think that he does. He's been around for a while. He's a veteran. But that RKO is still so over with the crowd that you put him in there and he sneak attacks somebody on any brand, and the fans will pop huge for it. So it really depends on what program they put him in and who they put him with right away, and who believes they have something in Orton that they can use. Bischoff has a history of using veterans and older guys. He did it with the Hogans and the Pipers and the Stings and the Flairs and things like that. I could see him really attaching to Randy Orton and making him a leader of something or a big part of the SmackDown brand. So maybe that's where you put him. But Heyman's smart, right? He understands what goes viral. He understands what pops. And that RKO pops. So I don't think you're hurt either way, no matter what brand you put him on. And you could probably move him back and forth. He's got enough name brand cachet to work on both brands. For me, maybe SmackDown.
Yeah, I liked what you were saying originally with that's kind of where we're at with WWE too, where there really is no brand split anymore. I think it's officially dead. Officially, unofficially, I should say. There's definitely no official. Just Cesaro and Alexa Bliss both fighting on, I guess, SmackDown people, and you really don't know anymore. So let's say both shows, whatever the storyline calls for, whatever the feud is. If he wants to go up against Seth Rollins, he wants to go up against Cesaro, he wants to go up against Aleister Black, he wants to go up against AJ Styles. Who cares? He's got, like you said, the name value, the finisher, and he's good. People like to complain about Randy Orton. The guy is one of the best in-ring workers I've ever seen. Like, he's so good and smooth. What he does well, he does perfectly. And I think his promos are all good. Like, he's really good on the mic. He's got the look. He's really the perfect pro wrestler. JBL said it all the time, right? Build a professional sports entertainer from the ground up. It would look like Randy Orton. I believe that. Everything about Randy Orton is what you want to sort of be. I think maybe fans got a little stale because he had the same character for years, right? And then he went to the Wyatt, and that was cool. But then he's just back to the same character. It is what it is. I don't really mind it, but I can understand when people get tired of it. It's like anything else. People have a short attention span, and that's not a slight at people. That's just the world we live in, where everything moves so fast. It's really hard to want the same thing over and over and over and over again, unless it's perfect. And Orton, as great as he is, he's not going to be, your perfect. After I said he's the perfect sports entertainer, you know what I mean, though. He's what I should say.
Yeah, my hope is that no matter where they put him, they do one of two things with him. Either he sneaks out all the time on almost everybody, he doesn't care who, just takes advantage of it and RKOs people from out of nowhere, because that's huge. People love that stuff. Or he's the sort of legend killer, kicking after the match is over to the head that he used to do all the time. And it was that build-up, where you knew he was going to take that extra blow and just kick somebody right in the head. People love that character too, so I hope that they do one of those two things with him. Outside of that, where they put him, I don't really care.
I think the biggest news of the week, and probably the best thing that happened in wrestling this week, Kevin Owens. That promo was just incredible. And obviously, we know it's not a pipe bomb. Like, we know it's not. We know it's very much planned out to be what it is to get the shock factor, but he still executed it perfectly.
Yeah, it was gold. I mean, I can't. There's two promos that I can think of in the last I don't know how many years that were close to The Miz on Talking Smack with Daniel Bryan.
Such a good promo. One. Maybe
And
the
the CM Punk pipe bomb.
Yeah.
Those are the two promos that he's just put himself up there with. My only concern, and we'll get to this in a minute because we should talk about how good it was before we do this, but that they are leading him down the Stone Cold Steve Austin path and maybe a little too much. And so if they're not careful, they could turn him into what people perceive as a replica of Austin. And I don't know how well that's going to be received by fans. But for now, the promo was so good and it was so hard-hitting and so truthful about what fans have been thinking and wanting for months. And the name dropping that he did with people like Kairi Sane and Asuka and Apollo Crews and Ali.
Liv Morgan.
People that should be
AOP.
should be getting an opportunity that aren't. I mean, it hit home, especially for the internet wrestling community who loves these guys.
Yeah.
They are immediately on board with Owens. They love it. It was the quickest turn from babyface to heel to babyface that I've seen in a long time. And it worked. It worked great.
It was perfect. He was a heel for as long as he needed to be heel. And then that's it.
No, I was just going to ask you what you think about, the stunner and the potential feud with Shane McMahon like Austin did with Vince McMahon. Do you see any of those similarities? Are you worried about them at all? Or is it just right now ride it for what it is, which was almost a feeling of a shoot promo that was obviously written for him, or at least given notes and say, here, just say this, and he added his own 2 cents. But are you focused on that and the good parts of it, or are you thinking and making those comparisons like I did?
I don't see the comparisons as a bad thing, so I would say it's all good. I think that, look, no one's going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin. No one ever, he was the biggest and the most important figure in the history of professional wrestling. Without him, the Attitude Era isn't as big as it is. WWE is at its all-time peak because of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's statistically true. Whether you want to agree with it or not you, but like the royal you, whether it's something people want to agree with or not, Stone Cold is the most important figure in wrestling history. That said, Kevin Owens is really, really good in the ring, on the mic, and he understands the business at a very fundamental level, behind the scenes and in front of the camera. He understands what it takes and what the business is. He understands what wrestling is as a fan and as a wrestler in the industry. So he's the perfect guy to go in here to do this. It's very believable because we know that he's been very hard on himself. He judges himself very harshly. He doesn't approve of if he has a bad match, he's going to beat himself up over it, and he doesn't want to do anything with half effort. And even if he does it with full effort and it's not great, he's the first person that'll critique himself. We know that Stone Cold's a fan of his as well, just from the past, where Stone Cold's specifically texted him and said hey, great match, stuff like that. That he loves that he's using the stunner as well, but he also hates that he's using the stunner for don't use a stunner and then kick out of it, right? If you're going to use a stunner, you better make sure you protect that move. So that's another thing that Stone Cold's talked about, but he pops when he sees the stunner. The promo itself was golden, like you said. Having those the name drops were huge for me. Looking specifically at the camera and talking about Shane McMahon and yelling he's been on TV more than anybody, and trust me, nobody at home ever wanted to see that. And I think we've talked about in that exact same wording. I think I've said nobody wanted to see that. Who asked for this, right? And we've talked about this now for months because look, nothing against Shane McMahon. The guy is popular, and when he has matches, the guy does high spots that nobody else will do. We know that Shane McMahon is very well respected by the guys backstage, the guys and girls backstage. That's why he does what he does, because he wants to be seen as a peer. So good for him. Kevin Owens, guarantee you, could not care less if Shane McMahon gets TV time. This is all a work, right? There's no part of this that was a shoot. However, I guarantee you he had some kind of liberties to say what he wanted and to name drop who he wanted, and at this point, it's perfect. Do you think this was Bischoff at all?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how involved Heyman and Bischoff are at this point. I assume that they immediately came in and had some input, but I'm watching Bischoff today, even on social media, posted he's headed to Stamford, he's moving there. That I've read other reports that their positions start after Extreme Rules. So I don't know if Heyman and Bischoff have been directly related to the storylines we've been seeing. I assume that they were, but I don't know that now. So it'll be interesting to see if they've had input on this stuff from far away, and then they're coming in to take over full time, or if they've been just sitting to the sidelines waiting for their starting date, which I think is after Extreme Rules, and then they'll take over which will completely throw a wrench into anything SummerSlam related.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we've both heard like pretty much the same things where they have input, but they're not really writing and booking and stuff. But still, I mean, there's definitely been. I'll say this: Raw and SmackDown. Let's take away that there's 2 parts of SmackDown that really stood out to me, but Raw and SmackDown, Raw specifically took a step back from last week, but that's hard because Raw last week was the best I've seen like in so long. Both shows are still fine this week. I have no issues with them really. SmackDown though, actually, you know what? I'm gonna take that back. Raw took a step back. SmackDown probably took a step forward. If I had to,
if I had
to like think about it.
Yeah,
now.
to me the shows were reversed. Last week it was Raw really good, SmackDown okay. This week SmackDown really good, Raw just okay.
This whole thing with we'll get into the predictions like I said, but the whole thing with Aleister Black again, he's there and he's like, you know, your opponent's not going to be here, but then all of a sudden the guy like circles the chair. It felt like a James Bond thing, and I wrote about this on Wrestling Write-Up. Cesaro versus Aleister Black. Maybe we can start the predictions and then get into that right away. Are you good with that? Do you have anything else you want to talk about
for
Owens and?
No. Let's go.
Okay, so let's talk about the Extreme Rules. That's this Sunday, the 14th, right? Is that the day? Yeah, 14th. So that's happening. We can start with the Aleister Black and Cesaro match because that's now official. Is this Aleister Black's first real match, like since breaking apart from Ricochet on TV? I think it is, right?
Since the brand split where they moved him back to SmackDown to be with Selena Vega, this is his first match, I think.
Right. So this is the perfect like best case scenario because I wrote a story on Cesaro and I wrote a story on Aleister Black over the last month, where both guys right now are primed. Like this is the perfect case scenario for both of them, and for Cesaro, like he's a single star, and we know he's a star. He's done it forever in his career, and he's even shown his tag team in WWE. The guy's gold with everything he does, and we know Aleister Black's really good, and their styles really complement each other. So I think this match could be. I don't think it's gonna be match of the night, only because Ricochet and AJ Styles exist. But other than that, this would be my pick for favorite if that match wasn't a thing. Because these two, like I said, they're both physical. They're both like hard strikers. They're both technically sound, and they both have like really high spot things. Whether it's the swing, whether it's the like the backflip off the like springboard off the rope, sitting down and stuff. They both have certain high spots that are really great, and like the European uppercut, the black mass kick. They have very complementary styles. If this match goes 20-25 minutes, which I don't know that it will, but if it does, you're talking about maybe a 5-star match. And I don't want to put that kind of pressure on them, but I think they themselves would already put that pressure on themselves because they know how good they are and they know how good they can be. It is the first time we're really seeing them against each other, so it's hard to know how they're going to actually mesh. Dream matches are only dream matches until you see them, and then maybe things just don't work. But I'm really excited about this match. I'll let you give your opinion on it, then we can pick our winners if you want.
Sure, yeah. Well, if it's me, I'm going to have this match go to a no contest. You mentioned a 20 to 25-minute match. That's exactly what I would do here. I can't see that Black is not going to get the rub here. They're building him up in his character with his backstage vignettes to be, a prominent figure on SmackDown Live or where they eventually stick him. But Cesaro's been getting a mini push. I mean, logically, you would think Cesaro will do the job here, but if you want to push both characters, a really good way to do that is you're talking about how they're picking a fight with each other, right? Aleister Black wants somebody to pick a fight with him. Cesaro has picked a fight with him. Why not have that fight be something that no one wins, right? Where you fight hard, that you ultimately win the respect of the crowd and you get both of those guys over at the same time, and they can fight again, right? Eventually you can have Black go over if that's what you want to do, and then Cesaro doesn't lose anything by doing that. But I think if you put Cesaro in there right now and you immediately give the win to Black, you maybe run the risk that whatever good you just did with Cesaro, you might hurt a little bit. But at the same time, Cesaro is Cesaro. He's going to bounce back either way. But I would love to see this thing just be a knockout, drag-out fight that really nobody wins, and you get respect for both guys at the same time. So that's where I'd love to see this go. I agree with you. I think it could be a match of the night. But there are a lot of matches on this card that we're going to talk about here that have the potential to be match of the night. I mean, I think there's 8 or 9 matches. Outside of maybe 2 of them, I think all of them could be match of the year quality matches. It's a very underrated card for how little it's been promoted, but the matches are so good. The opponents are so perfect for each other in a lot of these cases that there's going to be some really good action on this card. This match could be a top one among them, top three for sure.
Yeah, so look, the way like what you said, dream scenario, both knock each other out at the same time or something like that, or like one guy is like beaten so bad then gets like one last black mass or uppercut off, but then he passes out himself and it's just a no contest, like 10 count out. Great. We don't see that in WWE, but man, that's awesome. Like we never see that where they both just counted out to 10, and that's it. Like we've seen that with Kenny Omega versus Okada. I think it was the second match they had when Omega was about to beat him, and then just passed out from exhaustion.
Yeah.
So that's great. In my opinion, you can make, and I know we talked about it before, and you agree with this too, where you can make someone win or lose and not make someone look like a jobber in the situation. You can look bad in a loss, but you can also look really good in a loss. If they can do that and craft this match perfectly and make it so that one guy loses, and I think it's going to be Black winning if anyone wins for sure. I don't think it's even a question. I think Black has to get the win, which sucks because Cesaro's great. But we're in a situation where obviously Black is getting an opponent who's a veteran, who knows what he's doing, and who can, help get him that kind of connection with the crowd, that kind of popularity. So Black has to win if there's a winner. If it's, I don't want to see like a no DQ or sorry, like a double like a DQ or a double countout. I want to see like you said, both guys just like passing out. That would be great for me. Actually, I don't know if you wanted it like that. You just said a no contest. I'd be fine with both guys being like knocked out from each other. As opposed to like a double count out. I want to be like in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, for me, dream scenario would be the referee calls it, right? Like we saw hints of it on SmackDown where Shinsuke Nakamura fought Finn Balor and just beat that living tar out of him outside the ring. So he took him back outside, he threw him into the steps, he took him back outside, he gave him the Kinshasa, he took him back outside, and eventually that was just so much he was able to bring him in and pin him. And you would think that's surprising on paper to have Shinsuke Nakamura go over Finn Balor, but the way they put that match together, it wasn't surprising. It was a good match, very well done. I didn't have an issue with Finn Balor taking a pin. Now, if it was for a title, that would have been different. But Finn Balor losing,
of all squashes.
Finn Balor losing there doesn't hurt him the way that match was structured. You can do the same sort of thing with Black and Cesaro, where they're just beating the living crap out of each other, and eventually the referee says, "I don't see how I can continue this match," and calls it on behalf of both wrestlers. Whether it's that they're struggling to get up or they're just beating the crap out of each other. Or, like you said, both of them are sort of on the verge of passing out. Whether it's even just a time limit draw. You don't see those in WWE very often anymore, but we see them in AEW a lot. Cody Rhodes and, Darby Allin went to that and then did the overtime. Just don't do the overtime. You have the draw, and you get to the time limit, and you call it at that, and just begging fans to want that match again.
But right? That's because matches, like, by default have time limits, and I love time limits on the match. It means that a match is going to be, it could be 7 minutes, but if it's given a 15-minute time span, that it's going to be 15 minutes at the most. So it's nice to have that idea of like what a match is going to be. But also, as the matches get more important, a guy like, if we're being realistic, Cesaro and Black would get like a 15-minute time limit based off of where they are on the card. There's no title on the line. There's no background feud here. So they would get probably 15 minutes. 20 minutes would be better. But if they get 15 minutes in the ring together and they can just go the full distance and then it's like a timeout, well, now you've got to do it again and maybe you have a longer time limit the next time, and it's justified. So,
yep, shorter one on the first one is good for me. It doesn't need to be long; it just needs to be impactful. And if you do that, the second match, there's still plenty you didn't do in the first match that you can pull out in the second one, and it's not a repeat, right? So yeah, I'd be with that. I agree with you though. I think Black gets the nod here.
Yep. So that's one for Black each of us. So sorry Cesaro, but we don't think the WWE likes you that much.
I don't think Cesaro is too concerned about our opinion either way. So I'm sure he'll be
fine. I really don't think so.
Regardless of the outcome of this match, but
tell you what, Cesaro, if you really are so upset about it that we both think you're great but aren't going to get the win, talk to us about it. We'll be here. We can talk to you next week on the show.
That's right.
But I don't think so. But it'd be great.
Match do you want to go to next for the Extreme Rules?
We can just do the Gulak versus Nice one, right? Get that out of the way. Sure. We both said Nice at the last show, and then Gulak won. And now I want to say Gulak's going to retain, but I really don't know what they're doing in the Cruiserweight division.
For me, anybody in the 205 Live division that could be used on the main roster and be entertaining is the guy that I see getting these wins right now. Both of these guys could do it, but there's something about Drew Gulak that you just sort of want to watch him. Whether it's his PowerPoint presentations or, the other gimmicks and things that he's trying to get. He's pretty natural with some of this stuff, and so
Yeah.
I think that's a character that you can use on SmackDown Live for just a couple minutes at a time if you want to, just to introduce him to the audience, the mainstream audience that isn't watching 205 Live. So for that reason, I think he retains. But that's under the assumption that at some point Bischoff starts to go, let's bring some of these later guys up here, have some really high quality matches on the show. Maybe you don't need it because it's only a 2-hour show, but that's one of my predictions. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. But for me, I think it's Gulak retaining just because he might be, of those two, the guy that you can use on the main roster and it'll be a little bit more entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. Nice is really good in the ring, but I don't know that the character works really there, and that if you want to be on WWE television, whether it's Raw or SmackDown, you really need to have a solid character, whether it's because that's what Vince wants or because just that's what the fans want, right? Fans are very, like I said, Daniel Bryan's character is totally realistic. Fans are fickle. And we see this. JBL and Corey Graves on the commentary team have both done this in the past as well, where it's like, you can't just criticize someone because you don't like them. You can't take away the good they've done because you don't like them. That's not how that works, right? You can't say, oh, what, Alexa Bliss, you don't like her, so her credentials don't matter just because she's mean? I always like that kind of stuff, and I know JBL has always had his share of criticism out there, and rightfully so, but his character was always really fun on the commentary team. I thought he was really good on commentary, but that's a total sidetrack. So when you talk about character work, so I really went on a tangent. When you talk about character work and what fans want, they need that kind of character. And Gulak, maybe more than anybody in that entire cruiserweight division, and that's why Enzo was so good as well, and even Neville before him and Austin Aries. These people have great characters, and that's what WWE's are all about. It's huge character work. So when you have Drew Gulak versus Tony Nese, I mean, it has to be Gulak if you're looking at the guy who can get more over. And I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. Man, Eric Bischoff knew how to use those cruiserweights. That could be really fun.
Yeah, no, that was a staple of his on Nitro. I mean, he took a lot of credit for exposing them, even though ECW was the company that really did it first.
Yeah, they went from ECW to WCW and then got their huge rubs because of that, yeah.
Yeah, but Bischoff, wisely took the credit with the mainstream audience that he had, on the network and started putting those guys in, if not the first or second match of every Nitro, and it really built an audience for them. So he understands the value of those high-quality, fast-paced matches, right?
I mean, those are my favorite matches. Like, to this day, give me a high, like, fast-paced bunch of, I don't want to say a bunch of flips, but a bunch of, like, just technical stuff, whether it's, like, flips and, like, reversals and false finishes and stuff. Those cruiserweight matches were great. And it's because they were built like they were great. Not everything had to be built like it was the main event of a show, but sometimes those matches just looked like the main event of a show. One of the best matches I've seen in history would have been Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio back in WCW. What an incredible match.
Yeah, no, it was good. And I think there's a future for those guys. I just don't know whether or not it's going to be on 205 Live or somewhere on one of those two main shows.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're next.
Let's do, we talked about it briefly, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross in a handicap match against Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I've got a prediction here for this match, but I want you to give me yours first.
You want the prediction or you want the result? Because I know exactly what you're going to say, and I'm predicting it too, as I think most people probably are.
All right, let's go with what you say then.
Well,
whatever you want to say here.
This has got to be the return for Sasha Banks.
Right.
This is the perfect storm. I mean, it's just so glaringly obvious. We're all going to be disappointed if it doesn't happen.
I know, which is great, right? They've put us in a situation where Sasha Banks is like wildly unpopular with a lot of the fans because, well, not a lot, but like there's a lot of like the local minority who are mad at her and saying, "Oh, you took your ball and went home and grow up," and blah blah blah. Getting in a situation now where we want to see her, and I always want to see her. I love Sasha Banks, but a situation where the fan base as a whole would be disappointed to not see her, as you put it. That's good. That's, like you said, perfect storm.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's where I'm going to take a twist that I think most people probably aren't going to take. If Sasha Banks comes back, which I think that she will, because they're setting up a 2-on-1 handicap match, and it's the perfect scenario to do that, where she'll team with Bayley, here's what I would like to see happen after that happens. She turns on Bayley.
I have it written in my notes. Sasha return wants to fight Bayley.
Yeah. Like that, absolutely.
I agree with you.
That, the Sasha Banks boss character is by far her best character.
Yeah,
she has a reason to be mad at Bayley. This whole I left WWE thing is all perceived to be about the fact that Bayley and Sasha lost to the Iconics. Sasha doesn't like it. Bayley seemed okay with it. Everybody was fine. Bayley stuck around. She wound up getting the SmackDown Women's title out of it. Sasha Banks went home, was pouting or whatever people want to say that she was doing. Why is that not a storyline that's just prime for the making? You bring her back. She helps Bayley out. They get the win. Alexa and Nikki leave the ring. Well, at least you're expecting it because everybody's so happy that Sasha Banks and Bayley are back together as a tag team. Sasha Banks turns on Bayley, gets on the mic, delivers the A-plus promo that we know she's all capable of doing as the boss character and saying, I can't believe you didn't support me when I went home. You turned on me. Now I'm turning on you. That would be, for me, the best case scenario for Sasha Banks. And I think she would be on board with it because it really elevates her as a heel character. And I think she wants creative things to do, which is one of the reasons why I think she was so upset with WWE and needed that break. I don't know if they'll do that, but that would be really cool to me.
Do you think it's going to be still a handicap match and Sasha's going to just help and make sure that Bayley wins? Or do you think it's going to become like a tag team match?
I think if it's smart, they'll somewhere during that match, Sasha will show up. I don't want it to be at the beginning because it should be a handicap match. It's being promoted as a handicap match. It should start as a handicap match. But I think when Bayley starts to be overcome by Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss, which is natural, that should happen because they've been building up Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss is Alexa Bliss. She can't possibly beat those two. So when it looks like she's down and out, that's when Sasha comes back. She gets a massive pop from the crowd. Everybody's super happy. Oh my God, Sasha Banks is back. This is fantastic, even though we all sort of see it coming. And then the moment you least expect it, she blasts Bayley. Right?
So
that's how I would build this. But there's a lot of ways you could do it and have it work.
Yeah, there are a few ways they can do it. They can do it where like match is about to start and then her music hits, right? So she gets the full entrance. That could be really cool, just for the entrance style of it. They could do it where it's a tag team match, and then if it is really like her turning on her, maybe Sasha gets the pin, and then she says, "Well, I won. Like I got the pinfall, so I deserve the championship." It could be Bayley pulls out the win against all odds, and then as she's celebrating, Sasha's music hits. She gets the full entrance still, and then she didn't help her at all, but she just said like, "Hey, I won a match." Now the only issue with that one is that you don't get the full heel turn attack, right? Having kind of like a, whether it's verbal or physical, having her like come out and help, and then say like as Bayley's walking away, she just doesn't follow, and she's like, no, like we're not doing this. Like, you know, we've been the team, and that's that, and now I want to be me again. So that I think there's a few ways they can do it. I mean, now that we're saying this, I'm more convinced than ever it's not going to happen, and I'm going to be disappointed when Sasha doesn't show up. And I'm actually like going the other way with it now, and I'm hyping it myself down because it's not going to happen. Like that's just I've gotten my hopes up too many times in WWE to expect them to do it right. So now that my expectations are tempered, maybe I'll be very happy on Sunday.
I'm just going to hold out hope that WWE has sort of figured things out. The shows have been better. They've got the right guys potentially steering the ship now. That they've realized that these are the types of things that are going to work for this audience and what people are expecting, and this is how they should do it. For me, it's always shock value. I love shock value. Yeah, even if Sasha Banks is a predictable return, there's still ways of providing that shock value that fans will pop and then fans will hate. If you want to get somebody hated really quickly, you make fans pop and get emotionally invested and loving it, and then you turn on them all.
Yeah, you pull the rug out from them.
That's how you do it. That's right. And then you will be immediately hated. Right.
That was Chris Jericho, right? Chris Jericho coming out. He was great. Didn't say a word. Then left. Came back. Everyone screams. They freak out. He leaves. Doesn't say a word. Finally, when he starts talking, he just berates the crowd. Awesome.
Yep.
I agree with that. So we both have Bayley retaining that, right?
Yeah. So neither one of us seem to care about the outcome of the match. We think Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are not all that relevant within the match. We're just waiting for the Sasha Banks moment.
Or let's go conversely. Bayley helps Alexa and Nikki, and then Alexa and Nikki have their feud over the title, and Sasha and Bayley just have a feud, which I don't think will be as impactful, but that's an option, I guess. I didn't say that one, but it's definitely something that could happen. But that would be maybe the worst of the other options I gave.
Yep.
So okay. Bayley, we both have her winning. We can do. You want to go with the other women's title match? Technically, it's the main event of the show, I'd imagine, but it's Rollins and Lynch against Corbin and Evans with both titles on the line. I have another prediction here that I want you to go. Maybe I'll go first. You can tell me what you think. But unless you have something you really want to say about it.
Nope. I'm. Go ahead. You start with this one.
So Rollins and Lynch, obviously, I mean, on paper they win, right? No question, they win the match. However, what do you think about Lynch after they win? Lynch turning on Rollins, low blowing or something, and then Brock comes out and cashes in.
I think eventually that's where this will go. I just think it's too soon.
Sure, I think they're really capitalizing on it right now. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think that this is building. I know fans hate it, and they think that it's cheesy and corny, and Lynch is just sort of being goofy with the all that crap that she's been doing in the interviews.
It's definitely
I know,
corny
and it's funny,
and it's stupid, but I love it.
And Seth Rollins playing a backseat fiddle to Lynch and trying to get her over and being the man's man, right? I don't think fans like it at all. That said, I think what they're doing here, and it reminds me, depending on how old of a wrestling fan you are, there's a lot of the Macho Man Hogan Elizabeth aspect going on here. Yeah. Where there's this relationship that they're building, and it's not so much about the wrestlers themselves, but about that relationship, right? They're pushing hard the idea that Seth Rollins is the boyfriend of Becky Lynch. They were just at the ESPYs or something, and they did interviews, and that's all they talked about. This is her boyfriend, and Roman Reigns was there, and, who would you vote for moment of the year? Becky Lynch winning the titles at WrestleMania, Roman Reigns coming back from leukemia, and Seth Rollins had to be put in the middle, said, okay, here's your girlfriend, here's your best friend, who would you pick? Like, they're building this relationship, right? Which leads me to believe that at some point they're going to sever that relationship on TV.
Yeah, there's no reason not to.
Right. I just think they're going to build it up as hard as they can to the point where you're so used to seeing them together, like you saw the Macho Man and Elizabeth, that when it breaks, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that they just broke up.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it's still too fresh.
Though.
No, of course not. Because there may be no relationship bigger than Macho Man and Elizabeth in the history of wrestling. So you're never going to get that. But you can get fans used to the idea that Rollins and Lynch are a pair. They're a unit. They're not separating. They've been title holders for months. And then all of a sudden, now they're not. I think fans will get over the initial, oh, I'm annoyed by this, and just start to appreciate it for what it is. And that's when you take it away from them.
Yeah. I can see that happening. But
yeah.
So I'm glad we're on the same page then with a potential, like backstabbing there. Maybe we're giving too much credit. Maybe they never do it. Maybe they want to capitalize on it. And it's kind of like the Roman Reigns, John Cena, where we're looking for the heel turn. Becky Lynch is great as a heel and as a face, but I think as a heel she's probably better.
Yeah.
So I would be fine seeing that. Seth Rollins as a heel was fine. I think he's legitimately the number one babyface, and there's no reason to turn him, especially if you just turned AJ Styles heel. There's nobody else that can be your number one babyface akin to those two. So right now, at least not someone that's already built up in WWE. And I'm not talking about Kofi Kingston who's on SmackDown, honestly, that's a different story. But so we both agree then. Corbin and Evans lose.
Yeah, I would assume.
I don't want it to be a squash, though.
No, I don't think it will be. I think they're still building Lacey Evans. I think they still see a lot of high potential in Baron Corbin as a heel, and I think they're right on both ways. So I think they're going to get some offense in, some respect. But I think Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch win. But on your comment about who you turn heel, I actually think that Lynch will sell more merch as a heel than she will as a babyface. And typically that is why you don't turn somebody, because WWE is worried, oh man, it's going to hurt our merchandise sales. Well, the man t-shirts will sell way better when she's the heel version of the man, saying, hey, I don't need you. I'm the man. You're not the man. I'm the man. She's going to sell way more as a heel. So it's a natural option for me to turn Lynch heel, not Rollins.
And the thing about like her being heel is it'll be like Stone Cold, where they're not legitimate like full-time heels, right? Like they're bad guys. They're not bad guys. They're just not good guys. And I like that kind of in the middle limbo. It takes a very special person to pull it off. I think AJ Styles pulled it off in between his heel and then face turn, where he was kind of both. But Stone Cold and Becky Lynch, I think, both have the ability to be. You don't know if they're good guys or bad guys, but they don't really care. They're just their own entity. They're a sovereign state, if you will. Yeah. And I think that would be the best case scenario here. We can go to.
Yeah.
I'll go on.
I was just gonna say there are some characters that are heels, but they're not, like you said, they're not heels, but they're the heels fans want to see, right? AJ Styles, people can take or leave either way. He's a great babyface. He's a great heel. When you see him turn heel, you're not like, oh my God, yes, AJ Styles is a heel. I'm so happy he's a heel. But when you see someone like Becky Lynch turn heel, then you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. She's going to be the coolest character ever. When you see a guy like Steve Austin sort of turn heel, he's not a heel so much as he's just a badass.
Yeah, like badass is the best way to put it. Like,
yeah, and so everybody loves it because it's not, the baby face. Nobody wants to really see Lynch as a baby face. They want to see her as a cocky, confident, jerk who thinks she's the best thing ever. And that's the character they want. And so for her to break off with Rollins at some point allows her to get back to that, which I think fans would be really excited about.
What you're saying is kind of like Miz, Edge, Randy Orton, where they're very clearly heels, right? They never built. Even like Chris Jericho, who's fine, he's really good as a babyface, but Chris Jericho is a heel, right? Two is to the every fiber of his being. He loves it. He loves being that guy who can get a reaction, even if you have to incorporate humor, and he does it in every which way, which I think is great. But yeah, Lynch really, you can benefit from her in a different way.
Yeah.
So then we have.
So we're on the same page with Lynch and Rollins.
We're on the same page with everything. This is the first time I think we've got like everything is the exact same.
All right. Well, we need to pick a match we can start fighting over.
Strowman and Lashley.
Ooh.
I say that one because I'm very on the fence.
I'm going with Strowman. I've heard reports that Heyman has big plans for him and wants to see him go back to the monster side of Braun Strowman that fans really loved before they sort of took it away from him. So in that case, I would say Strowman gets the win here. And I've also heard reports that Lashley and Bray Wyatt may be working on a program together. And they had some communication on social media just the other day. The two went back and forth, which leads me to believe if Lashley loses to Strowman, Lashley's going to have something to prove. Why not pick a fight with someone like Wyatt or whatever? You need a program for him right away because he's mad he lost to Strowman. So for me, I think it's Strowman gets the win. But I really like what they've been doing with Lashley lately. So if they decide, to give the rub to Lashley, they'll tell us a lot about what they plan for Strowman and what they plan for Lashley.
Do you think it's any way that this is also like a no contest thing, or do you think they're going to end this feud right here?
Well, if they do a black win instead of a draw, then sure, I could see maybe them doing that because Lashley is a powerhouse, and he is pretty mad, and he's maybe the strongest guy to ever go up against Strowman at this point. So you could get away with, you could get away with that for sure. I don't know, maybe. I just see Strowman with a brighter future because Heyman's taking over Raw.
Yeah, I also have Strowman winning, so I didn't do what you asked me to do. And at least I disagreed with you and went with someone we're going to agree with, I guess. Kind of stretching it, grasping at straws here. I also have Strowman winning, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Lashley wins. So that's kind of where I'm at with that match. Here's one that could be... See, I don't think we're going to disagree, but I think this is the one that I'm the most on the fence about. Kofi Kingston against Samoa Joe for the WWE Championship. Who wins that? You know what? I have one more that I'm really on the fence with. We'll go with this, but I have one that we might actually disagree with. But right now for this one, I have Kingston winning.
Okay, I have Samoa Joe winning.
Okay.
I don't think it's time to take the belt away from Kingston, but something tells me that he's got injuries that he's dealing with that might be a problem. And I also think that Samoa Joe is so hot right now with his promos that they might try to capitalize on it.
Also, Joe versus Lesnar, I was so hyped up for their match. They could put that kind of angle together again where, maybe Lesnar wants to cash in and then Joe's like, do it. I'm here.
Yeah, I still think Kingston's got some run in him, but I just don't know how bad his injuries are. He's been pulled out of live events. He's not been wrestling on SmackDown. It's just, he did that segment with Samoa Joe where he, Trouble in Paradise him in the face during the promo interview. So obviously he's mobile enough to do stuff. So he's having this match at Extreme Rules, but I just don't know if they're being cautious with him or he's really dealing with something. And if he's really dealing with something, Samoa Joe is one of those heels that, remember we've talked about it in the past. Who do you have to take the belt off Kingston? There's only a handful of guys that you can get away with that, and Joe's one of them. The idea is that you want to hate him, and WWE wants people to hate him. Well, one of the ways to hate him is to have to take the title off Kingston.
Sorry, someone that you hate, but someone that's also immensely possible. So a Kevin Owens, a Samoa Joe, a Dolph Ziggler, right? Someone where they're immensely popular and the fans want them to be champion, but wow, you did it at the expense of Kofi Kingston. And we know that Kingston has to lose it eventually, but fans aren't going to be happy one way or another. But I do think you have to capitalize. I know it sounds weird. You have to make Kingston lose when fans still want him to be champion. Because if you let it go too long and they get stale with it, well, then it doesn't have the same effect. So you can't ride this out and then let it die and then build back up. You've got to keep the train rolling. That's also why I think Kingston could win and then Joe attacks him after the match and Lesnar comes in to cash in. Maybe that's the whole thing.
Yeah, there is that whole Lesnar angle.
But this one, I'm on the fence about. I think Kingston wins and maybe there's something after the match. But if Joe wins, I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm fine with that. I'd actually be happy with it.
Yeah.
I think I'd be more happy with it because I think Joe deserves it. I think just like Kofi Kingston, Joe's put in so much time in the industry. He deserves this run, even if it's a short-lived one, regardless of what it is. Like, give him the title, let him have his moment, right? But whether or not that happens, I don't know.
Well, and we talked about how popular Kevin Owens was with his promo. There may be no other man outside of Kevin Owens who's as hot with his promos right now as Samoa Joe is.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that WWE values that. They see something in it, and they realize that here's a guy that you can either get to hate you or love you and get fans behind you as a champion that works. So I could see. And he hasn't really gotten a fair shake since he's got there. And maybe it's time that he does.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we have 3 tag team matches and 1 singles match left. Let's go with the 3 tag team matches first. So
Sure.
We've got Heavy Machinery against Bryan and Rowan, who are the champions, and against the New Day for the championships. I have Heavy Machinery winning.
Okay. Because they're new and popular, or what's your reasoning?
I think they're immensely popular. I think Rowan and Bryan were always kind of a secondary, and I don't think New Day needs it, especially if we're going to have Kofi losing the titles. Why would you give New Day the championships? Unless that's just like a transition and he's just all of a sudden back in the tag team division, which is fine. He's going to end up back there eventually. But I just think this is the time for Machinery. They're at an all-time high. They're winning all their matches. The crowd loves them. This has to be the time when WWE sees that there's a fan, there's a fan swarm towards one person or one tag team, and they don't let it go too long before they give them the championships. Just give them the titles now when they're white hot, right? That's how I see it.
Yep. I think that you're onto something there. I think a lot of people will agree with you, but I'm actually, while I agree with you, I think that's the reason that they don't win. I think because they're so white hot right now, you can have them lose and it won't matter. I also think that Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan have taken a lot of pins lately, Bryan especially, and they're crafty and sneaky, and this is the perfect scenario where you have 2 teams that are favorites, Heavy Machinery and New Day, and Daniel Bryan and Eric Rowan steal a win, and they haven't had one in a while. And if you're going to keep Bryan a really strong heel, have him do it against a team that's white hot like Heavy Machinery.
Sure, I can see it going that way as well. I feel like they've won all the big matches as far as title defenses and stuff goes, so whether they've lost matches on SmackDown or not, it shouldn't really matter. But I see your reasoning, and again, like we said, sometimes a superstar can take a loss and it won't really hurt them. And I think that's the case. It might make you more popular in some situations where like Jeff Hardy, when he kept losing the big match against Triple H for the title, and then Edge and everything, and then finally he comes in and he wins against them at Armageddon. That's my favorite moment as a fan of wrestling. Just as someone who's such a big Jeff Hardy fan and who watched that for so many years, it was 16 years at the time he was trying to get the title. Having him lose made him only more popular, right? So it's there's a fine line there. I don't think this is comparable to a guy who's a 16-year vet who was fighting for the WWE Championship as opposed to a team that's been here for less than a year fighting for the Tag Team Championships. I don't think you can compare it. But at the same time, the general idea is there where losing isn't always a death mark, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's going to be a moment for Heavy Machinery, and I think one of our first episodes way back, and we're up episode whatever we're on now, but way back in the first or second. Yeah, I said that Heavy Machinery within a year will probably be a champion, and I still think that's the case. I just don't know if this is that day. I think it's coming, and it might even come, the next couple weeks. Yeah, maybe SummerSlam.
That's something you have to consider, right? SummerSlam is the second biggest show of the year. Right, it's the WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Rumble, and Survivor Series, probably in that order, is what it's supposed to be anyway. In my opinion, it's WrestleMania, Rumble, then SummerSlam. But they booked SummerSlam to kind of be another WrestleMania because it's half a year later. So we have to take that into consideration. Do they want to have the payoff now, or do they want to have the payoff for some of these matches at SummerSlam? So that could be, you might be onto something with that. I can see that being the case.
All right, where do you want to go next?
You have Bryan and Rowan, I have Heavy Machinery. So that's 2 matches in a row now we disagree with.
Although
I don't, like I said, I wouldn't mind Joe winning. But, so let's go Revival versus Usos. I have Revival retaining.
As do I. I just think right now with the program they're working with McMahon and McIntyre and all those guys, that they're too hot. Now, that said, I don't think you can ever take the Usos out of the equation. Those guys seem to win, all the time. They get pins when they get a pin, they get a title when you don't think they're going to get the titles. So it wouldn't shock me if the Usos won. But for now, I see the Revival winning because I just see WWE is put them as the heel tag team. So for that reason, I keep the titles around them.
The last tag team match before the big controversial one that I'm not sure about. So we got the Reigns and Undertaker versus Shane and Drew McIntyre. What do you think is going to happen there?
It's got to be Reigns and Undertaker.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't know exactly what this match is going to look like, and I've seen some clips of the Undertaker recently where he's like losing his mind, dumping water on his head, running up and down the apron, trying to cheer on his teammates. It's very unlike the Undertaker. So I'm hoping that maybe we don't see that on Sunday at Extreme Rules, and if we do, it's going to look really goofy. When you see the Undertaker, you don't think of that sort of image of him, but I just don't see how, Reigns is probably going to get the rub here. Undertaker will probably be the setup man, leading to a Superman punch and a spear, and then it's over. And probably on Shane McMahon. I mean, it makes the most natural sense that Shane can take the pin, and no one will be surprised.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially if you have Kevin Owens, like, who's not really on the card, right? Like, he could potentially be involved in that.
Yeah, that would make sense to have him come down, especially if he's being built into some sort of Austin where he's a poop disturber. He comes down and he stirs the pot and just gets involved and then takes off again, right? Like we saw Austin do that a ton. He did it when Mankind won the title for the first time. We saw it when, all sorts of times where Austin just came down and got himself involved at the end and caused the win, and away you go. And Owens could do that. So you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that, but that could happen.
Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't
think Reigns I don't think either one of them is going to need it. Reigns and Undertaker may be the most dominant tag team since Kane and Undertaker. So I don't know how you would beat those two.
And then the big one, the one where I don't even know who I have this written down. I have someone winning it, but it was after I already switched it. And next to my prediction, I have a question mark because I have no idea. But I think, it's going to be AJ Styles and Ricochet for the U.S. Championship. Who do you have winning this and why?
I like the idea that maybe AJ Styles takes the title and does something with the club to further the power of that faction. I would be sad to see Ricochet lose his U.S. title already, but I think there's such a bright future for him that whether or not he has the belt at the end of this pay-per-view probably doesn't really matter that much. And having him lose in a scenario where it's really 3-on-1 isn't hurting him, right? Like no one expects him to beat those odds.
I also have AJ Styles winning it, but man, I just don't know.
Characters as a faction. I'm totally good with that. It makes a lot of sense, and that's the kind of thing you do. And we talked about it already. Not a heel being a popular bad guy. AJ Styles is pushed as a heel being a heel. So the idea here is that he steals that title and he brags about it.
Yeah, I think that could be really interesting. It would be a good angle to have. Like you said, like having him be a heel, right? You want to see a heel while AJ Styles in the club. That's the best case scenario where they can just be that perfect heel unit. So I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I have Styles coming out on top. That's kind of where I'm at. All right, man.
Well, I think that covers it.
Yeah. Got an hour out of you for your workout, so we know you worked out for at least an hour.
Yeah, hopefully there wasn't too much banging and clanging in the background. I tried to mute it as much as I possibly, but I'm sure that you'll hear some of this on the recording, but we'll do our best to try to take it out if we can. Cool. Yeah, man, if you're good, we can leave it at that.
Yeah, sure. That was good. Okay. Again, this is presented by thesportster.com. You can find us on Twitter at the Sportster on Twitter. You have also Wrestle Write Up on Twitter. We're on Facebook. All the platforms we mentioned before: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. We're hosted on Anchor, Podbean, really anywhere like that. Interact with us. Let us know.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Well, we'll talk to you next week. I'm looking forward to Extreme Rules. It should be a fun pay-per-view, and I think going to be a pleasant surprise for a lot of people who weren't expecting much out of it, but I think it'll be a good show.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Okay, we'll talk to you next week.
Take care.